Hello, hello, Ederson Oliveira here for the DNN store. Today I have with me Daniel Mettler. He is the owner of 2SIG Internet Solutions and the creator, of course with his team as well, of the famous 2SIG module, free module for DNN. He is also a DNN MVP and a prolific blogger. Just to say a few things, but let's stop right here. Daniel, welcome.
Hi there.
Daniel, as you have suggested, I'm going to start with the main course here. So how will someone benefit from watching our talk today?
Well, I think what's been happening with DNN is that it's been a lot for developers mostly, and it's been a bit scary for web designers and people trying to create really, really nice websites that perform well, that scale well, that are responsive. And basically, 2Sexy does all that, and all in very modern ways, the way you'd expect any modern website to work, but the way you've usually just seen it on WordPress and things like that. So I think if you haven't used 2Sexy yet, you should really, really watch this video, because you're going to see a lot of things that you will think were not possible before, and I'm pretty sure you'll get excited and give it a try.
Okay, so I may here and there call it 2Sexy content because that's the way I'm used to refer to 2Sexy. But how about you, one, explain a little bit about it, and two, maybe demo a very basic use case of the module.
Okay, so basically we started with this in 2012, and the main reason was that DNN did not have a content strategy. It still doesn't. DNN is like a toolbox for developers, and there's some modules which do something, but as soon as you want to create really cool content, with images that resize correctly, it gets really difficult. And so, yeah, as we just said, can you see my screen?
I can see it right now. Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is the very newest version, 8.1, and for example, a lot of things we just improved because we're all about the end user experience. For example, if I mouse over something, the buttons just appear, and I am not in edit mode because that is very, very slow. And so if I would take this example, I would edit this content block here, you would just see it looks very simple, but I have a full WYSIWYG implementation here, and it's really just like you would expect it to. So for example, I prepared a picture here which I would like to use. I can just drag it from my computer, drop it here, and it's in the WYSIWYG automatically. I have all my resizing tools the way you'd expect them to work. And so this is content experience the way people would love it, but the way it just never worked before. But 2Sexy is much, much smarter because typically you should not put pictures in your WYSIWYG. It does that too, but you shouldn't. In reality, 2Sexy is all about putting the intelligence and the design in the web designer's hand. So I will now drop the image not in the WYSIWYG, but in the image field. And if I now save it, I will automatically have a template which intelligently places the things for me. It resizes it for me. But if the content editor thinks it should look a bit different, he can choose a different view. And again, this was prepared by the web designer. Everything just looks right. And the templates have the intelligence, the pictures get resized, all that happens without the end user having to think a lot about it. And that's the power of 2Sexy content, creating content which intelligently looks right and having a really, really fast, easy user experience so that it just works.
Got it, got it. So I think that you covered that a little bit there on the demo, but I'm going to ask that question anyway. If you can summarize and try to explain what is the problem that 2Sexy content is addressing. What is the one problem that it's addressing?
I would say it's mainly content management. That's what it's all about. Content management in every single way you could think of, in all the different channels you want to output. It just takes care of everything for you. Content management.
Got it, got it. Okay. So I'm assuming it makes it easier to manage content from an end user point of view. Now, usually when something makes one audience makes it easy, very much easy for one audience, there is another audience that may be suffering there because maybe it's too complex. It's a little bit complex to set up. So I'm not saying that it is. I'm just asking you, how would you describe the learning curve for someone that wants to use it, and it's not the content editor, but it's the creator that will put the site together? So how would you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so the way we see it, we have like different levels of people, and actually our most important customer is the end user, who should have a great viewing experience, and our second most important customer is the person editing the content. That's what you just saw right now. And of course the next level is the web designer, which we regard as somebody who wants to get things done quickly but doesn't really have programming experience. So from our vision, or from the way 2Sexy is built, this is very, very easy. There's a lot of demo templates and demo apps. That's something we have not talked about yet. They can just quickly download, because there too we've experienced if we write a lot, people would just like to see an example, try it, and go for it. So there's an app catalog where you can like download a bunch of different functionalities, see how they work, and we always create a bunch of tutorials. So I would say it's very easy. Could I share this? Is my screen still shared? Okay, so just one simple example here with the very same template. I could like go into this administration button. This is not seen by the normal content editors. Again, we want to make the content editor experience simple. And the web designer, for example, can click on the code editing, and he will get a code editor. It has IntelliSense and things like that, and it has various snippets to get him going. So it's actually very easy to just add something. This is live, so I'm not going to do a lot here, but it's very easy. Or, for example, typically somebody getting started would like to do something like show the username. Well, there's all these snippets all ready to just click on and say, well, is he the super user? And you can just output this information. So it has loads and loads of tools built in and functionality to help you discover the functionality and to get going. It's also, it may feel technical, but we try to to produce as little custom technology as possible. So everything is Razor, everything is JavaScript, everything is HTML, and there's almost no proprietary in it for the web designer.
Got it. Okay. So one thing that when someone is getting started on a new tool, and by the way, just want to quickly mention that I've used 2Sexy content a lot in the past. I haven't seen the latest as you are showing right now, and it looks really good, really good. I'm really enjoying seeing what you are demoing there. In any case, for someone that is just getting started, a little bit of documentation of tutorials is always nice. So can you maybe show a little bit about that? Because I saw on the website, maybe you want to cover that a little bit of how I guess you introduce 2Sexy content. Because here's the thing, I guess that you have to sell this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you have to sell this initially to the developer that is producing the site or producing the system, whatever it is. So how do you introduce them to how to entice them with some training to 2Sexy content?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, if you download 2Sexy and you install it, it'll immediately ask you, should I get started with some demo templates and demo apps? And I'm almost sure most people will start with that. They will install an FAQ or a news app and just have a look at how that works. Because in the background, it provides so much advanced functionality, it just takes time to learn everything because it really can do a lot for you. In general, though, am I sharing the screen? Okay, so on 2Sexy and on other platforms as well, there's an extensive blog. For example, here I'm just presenting the newest functionality, including drag and drop of pictures and things like that. So here I am writing a lot of, let's say, very new stuff and using advanced functions. But in general, the apps are the place to get started, where you could find something like a compare image app, and we always try to provide as much screenshots, but of course time is always limited, so you would download something like this, have a look how it works, and get started. But there are also a lot of documentations and manuals. So in here, I'm logged on right now. That is why, of course, you see all these buttons. But there's a lot of things like the automatic digital asset manager, or all these special things. But in 80% of the cases, when you get started, your templates will be very simple. There will be a picture here, a text here, and the rest is all in your CSS. So a very simple template is so trivial that you will usually just learn as you go.
Okay, good. So let me ask you this. So, oh, by the way, is there any other demo or something else that you'd like to show before I dig into a little bit of more of a personal note about the company, the organization, the product as well? Is there anything else that you'd like to showcase?
I would like to show some more advanced use cases, but maybe we would do that a little bit later, because this is, I know that there's like always, there's this the end user, the visitor, there's the editor. We've now talked a little bit about the web designer, and there's a whole lot there for the developer and the JavaScript, REST, Web API guys. And there's so much cool stuff there, but I think it would make things very complicated if we continue with that. So I'd like to do that later.
Got it. Okay. So I've noticed that just yesterday you had a new release there. Talk a little bit about the process of getting user feedback and what you come up with in the next release. How do you guys prioritize those what comes up next?
Okay. I think one of the things you have to know is we are probably one of the biggest web agencies in the DNN ecosystem. So actually most of the requests that come in from our own company. We've also had this problem. I mean, Steve Jobs once said if he would have asked people what he should do on a smartphone, they would have given him a lot of wishes and a lot of buttons, but nothing like the iPhone. And so actually we're very, very careful with user requests because they tend to be very focused on the old way of doing things, on ASP.NET ideas and things that are very complicated. So we love feedback, we love requests, but very often we may end up doing something completely different. For example, the newest Word WYSIWYG editor that you just saw there, it's really, really nice, and it does not have a color or a font picker. And now there's somebody out there, like the technical developer will say, well, that's you, how could you forget that? That was so important, my customer loved it. And in reality, the way we see the world, the template should be smart enough to make things look good, and the content editor is usually not smart enough to make it look good. So that ends up us providing functionality which people may not expect in very different ways. So like this drag and drop upload, this took us at least 2 weeks to get that right of work. And we think it's extremely important. And we think it's very important to not have a font picker, which others may like. So the way we did it now is by default it should make people not shoot themselves in the foot. It should make things work. If you really want to hurt yourself, you can activate the DNN WYSIWYG editor. It's in there somewhere. But if you keep an open mind, you will probably realize that it's not a good idea to do that. So that means from our experience, we usually collect from what we see our customers failing. The Word editor was terrible, the WYSIWYG. We see where our customers fail, and that's usually where we pick it up.
I think that you were very right there, and you mentioned the color picker and the font picker, you know, and that's the usual problem that we have when we are dealing with the out-of-the-box editor of DNN and any other editor out there. I'm not restricting the criticism just to DNN. This is not specific to DNN. I mean, any CMS out there that will allow you to do a lot of that messy stuff. I mean, it should be really coming off of the you know, the template, the skin, the theme, and all of that. So I understand that concept. I think it's hard though to convince the regular user out there that this is the right move, but I understand where you're coming from, and I do agree with that. Now, let me just keep on the same topic as user feedback, but I've seen here on GitHub that you have an issues tab. And is that the place where, you know, users of the module are able to interact with you, the company, about the project, about the module? Is that the place, usual place?
Yeah.
Is it?
Absolutely. So this too means, I mean, if you look at our project, we're very JavaScript based. This is something that has not come up yet, but we are actually not the standard Microsoft developer profile. We've broken out of the ecosystem so many times, but we like the way the rest of the world does the things with Grunt and Node.js, NPM, and GitHub, of course. So we do as much as possible on GitHub, and that's also where we process customer feedback, or of course, not customers, because our customers don't know GitHub, but yeah, other people that use TooSexy interact with us on GitHub. We give feedback there, and in some cases we can just fix something very quickly, or we help them get it to work. And there's also been cases where people would sponsor a feature, which of course is great too.
And then those featured sponsored things, are they incorporated into the open product? I mean, just a curiosity.
Yes, always. Always. I could think of a few. One of the newest ones, which was sponsored, is sometimes you would like to make a complex page which has maybe a picture slider on top and maybe a person box on the side and this and that, and you would like to export this as a template and then provide it as a template in the rest of the site. And TooSexy has a very complex data model. This was not possible. In the newest version this works, and this was a sponsored feature.
Got it. Okay, so again, feel free at any point, because I may not be asking the dev-oriented questions. I may start talking a little bit more about the business itself and the fact that, and here's what, I mean, whoever doesn't know about TooSexy content needs to realize that this is a free product. So again, it does this whole bunch of stuff. So that's what I want to get a little bit here, is the more of the business side of what you're doing there. Why a free product like that? Why?
Okay, here's the hard truth if somebody sells a product. If you would sell a product, no matter whether it's $10 or $1,000 or $10,000, you will have to provide support for it, and you will have to jump when the customer says something. And the moment you don't jump, you will get really bad ratings, and people will stop buying your product. And to be completely honest, in Switzerland our wages are very, very, very high. We simply could not figure out a price at which we could provide support that would make sense for anybody. So that was when we started doing this. We were thinking, could we sell it or whatever, and we just realized that the cost of selling it would be so high it wouldn't work. And so we opted to go the other way, because by making it an open source project, it's a lot of fun. People appreciate what you're doing. They're not complaining because they paid you $12 and now it has to work. But they actually really appreciate what you're doing, and everybody loves what you're doing. And if you then write a blog about it, they're happy too. And it just gives us a completely different approach. And I would claim that TooSexy is the standard in content management at the moment on DNN. I believe there's nothing comparable, especially once you go into multi-language or data versioning or all these things we didn't even talk about yet. And by making it open source, of course, we're hoping that people will appreciate us so much they will give us work. It's happened a few times. And otherwise, our team has a lot of fun developing this, because it also doesn't have the same pressure as a customer project. So we're kind of covering a lot of bases except for the income side.
Got it. So let me ask you that. Is yourself and your clients and your business a huge user of the module as well?
Yes. We would not be able to create any useful DNN website without TooSexy. Basically, the moment a customer wants to edit content, things become so nasty in DNN, or the moment the customer, or the moment our web designers need to add a functionality like a blog or something, if you just use DNN onboard tools, you run into so many problems, including update cycles, which you have to update the modules and the third-party vendor doesn't exist anymore. And we just had the problem that we would have image rotators. We would think, gosh, for $15 this is cool, but downstream of the project, it would kill us, because the image rotator would not be multi-language and the customer needs it, so we would spend like days trying to get a $15 module to work for functionality which we could do ourselves in half an hour. And that's why we basically stopped using almost any kind of other third-party module, because everything was so much easier in HTML and CSS than trying to, let's say, abuse a contact form tool and get it multi-language if it didn't support it. Yeah, so we use it in every single project, in over 700 projects already, ourselves.
I see. That's I can tell you that's unexpected, because I mean I was thinking that the angle was slightly different, but it makes a lot of sense what you're doing. So you're telling me that you actually, your organization with your clients, you actually don't use too many third-party modules aside from your own.
No, we like DNN Sharp, like the action forms, and sometimes we use one or two other modules, but it's very, very rare, because if we're completely honest, almost all use cases are data in, data out. And it doesn't matter whether it's a catalog with some advanced functionality, whether it's something that has this smart scrolling kind of a thing where, like Facebook, the stuff just appears later. It's still data in, data out. The one use case where Too Sexy is not optimal is there where the end customer, so that the viewer, creates a lot of content. But that doesn't even make like 1% of all our use cases. So for that, we love using other modules which have that solved much better. But for everything else, it's Too Sexy.
Got it. Okay. So how about we shift a little bit and go, because you said that you wanted to go a little bit more advanced. So how about you do that? Go a little bit more advanced now with whatever technical aspects you want to cover. That's the time. I'm going to shift to your screen now. So okay. All yours.
Okay, perfect. One thing I would like to show you is the more technical side in the data management. For example, let me just quickly, again, a very common use case is that you would update the data and you would want to have it not published yet. So I can make changes and save it, and I will see the changes, but the end user will not. Now, to achieve this in the background, you see it's not published. If I would press the button, it would get published. But in the background, of course, we have an extensive data management system. Now, in the background, let me switch over to my blog app here, for example, and let's go into managing this. What you will see is that there is, of course, a data management user interface. And I'm going to show you something very advanced, because this is one of the things we just surfaced. There's something called ghost content types. So I have a content type like a blog post. This has 12 fields, and in simple scenarios this makes a lot of sense. But if I have a complex portal with a lot of subportals and I need to share a content type, Too Sexy can do that by going into an advanced mode. And here's the deal. Whenever you see this pie, you can control-click on a dialog and new buttons will appear. So this is the really crazy stuff which a lot of people wouldn't understand. And here, for example, I can really go and look at the insides. I can say, oh, okay, show me the data from the system scope, and I can see some really, really tough stuff in here. For example, I could see all the fields all the data types which are used in the background. This is very advanced because if we look at it, an app, in this case the blog is an app, I need to be able to export it in one chunk and re-import it in one chunk, even if I have a lot of pictures attached and data schemas, and everything has to work. So there's a really advanced data management system in the background, which almost nobody even realized is just provided, again, for free together with the Too Sexy. What I also really like is the visual queries. So I hope this works, because right now, just after the update, I haven't tested it yet. But basically, this is how the data comes in the blog. This is the blog case, so let me just show you this again. This is the page that shows you the blog, and I would like to retrieve the data in a configuration way, which means give me all the items, sort them correctly, don't give me the ones that are not published. Of course, hide the ones that are in the future. And Too Sexy has a really powerful, it's called a visual query, where I would say, here's my cache data, then filter by publish, then do various kind of filters, like if the URL contains a tag, then use this filter. If it contains an author, use this filter. Then if it doesn't have anything, just use the default list, sort it properly, apply paging, cache the result, and then provide it to this template, which will then show this. This may feel very complicated, but once you get used to working with this, let me just show you an example. I have this block here. I can say, okay, if it has, here, I want to filter the tag field by something that comes from the query string. And this is really, really neat stuff because it allows you to do really complex things. And I have data sources for SQL. I even have a form and list data source for people coming from the old days. I can apply so many things without having to program, and what's best is I can use it both on a server-side template, but I can also use it on a client-side template like for AngularJS or jQuery, because I can just use that pipeline and stream the data directly to my JavaScript. And these are really cool use cases which mean I can create a Web 2.0 single-page application without a single line of server code. And we've actually even implemented new AngularJS apps which Google will index using all this technology. And so in other words, it feels very simple, but the background is so amazingly complex and solid that you can do really, really awesome stuff with it.
Let me ask you a question. So I get a feeling that if you don't need the advanced aspects of it, you don't have to use. So again, you can go as deep as you need to go.
Yeah.
That's correct? Now, let me ask a very specific question here. What about URL management? Again, I don't know how you answer that without being too technical, but I'm gonna ask anyway. How about URL management? For instance, you are showing me articles or blog posts, however you want to call those. If you click on any one of those titles and go to the actual article, is the URL friendly or not? I mean, how do you handle that by any chance?
Yes. So let me make an example. I'm currently on the page blog. You see my screen? Okay. So I'm currently on the blog page, and I will quickly go into the administration and look at the views. So I have like a normal default view, and then I have a view called the post details, which will react to anything if the URL has the word post in it. So in other words, if I click on something, then the template says I'm going to make a link with the word post, and because it now has post, 2Sexy loads a completely different template to create the page, and I didn't have to create a page in DNN for this. So this is all just intelligence in the templates, in the views that do that. And the link, as you can see here, this is a server-side handled link. We also have push state when we use like more JavaScript-based applications where the page does not even reload. But in this app blog, and this blog app, for example, of course, we use server-side, and that just works. So yes, it's very easy to make friendly URLs.
Got it. So what I'm getting from what you're telling me is, I guess that you mentioned that at the beginning of the interview, which is a lot of the power of the platform, of let's call it a platform, that you put forward there are the apps that you can already download and will bring those features and functionalities out of the box, and you don't have to start from scratch on those.
That's right, yeah. You can just quickly install a new app. I'm just going to show you how that would work. I could go to the app management and say, well, install a new app. I could go online to find them, or I could just import one, choose a zip file, and it'll just add it to my list of apps which I have. For example, I recently just created a Discuss app, which, sorry for that scrolling stuff, here offers Discuss functionality. You can just install that within 3 minutes, everything works, and the moment you say, I would like it a little bit different, you can, and that's the magic of it. If you take a DNN module and you need something a bit different, it's a closed box. It's a DLL and some often very nastily entwined components, and here you can just install it, you can look at the HTML and just change it, whatever you want to do.
Actually, I'm being sold more and more as you go along, Daniel. You're gonna have another user right after this, no? Okay, is there any other demo that you want to, because again, I want to move a little bit to more of a background story here. So is there anything else that you want to finish in terms of demoing, anything to close that door, I would say?
Yes, I think one of the last things that I regard as very, very important, I just need 1 second to figure out where I could show it, is multi-language. In Switzerland, we have 4 national languages, and all the international companies need English, so it's a very core problem, and DNN doesn't really solve that well. And what you'll see a lot is that there will be, again, modules which try to solve it at module level, and instead of the system doesn't provide it. And if we would look at a real-life example, let me quickly go back to our home page. I would like to say that let's take this as a content block. There may be things that I have to translate and things that I do not want to translate. But this may change. So if the developer would say the picture is the same in all languages and the text is not, then the translators would have a real problem when this slide pops up which has text on it, and they would not be able to translate it. So here I have a use case where I have the English content, I have a question and an answer, as you see with all the functionality. And if I would like to go to German, well, with each field, the user can decide whether it has to be translated or not. Now with 2 fields, this is not very important, but in a content lifecycle, it takes so much time to manage languages downstream. Let's make an example. You have 12 languages on your website, and you would like Spanish and Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese to be linked together because they will have the same pictures. Then you want Swiss German, Austrian German, and whatever other German linked together. You can do all this in here by simply saying, well, link this value to that, link this from that, this one's read-only, and the editor can do this. And this is really amazing, and I don't think any other solution even gets close to that. Okay, so back to you.
Good. Let me see here. So it's not the time yet to do what's coming next, but I guess let's do a 2-3 minutes here of the past. So what is the original idea, the original concept of Too Sexy? Where did that come from?
Basically, if people look at it the first time, they will think it's a lot like Xmod or like form and list. And that's the developer way of looking at it. And that's actually what happened, is that we of course realized we needed something to dynamically create content types. And intuitively there were solutions out there that would do it. But all of them assumed that you have a list of items. People were always thinking, it's a list of catalog items or a list of news items, but nobody realized that in most cases you just have one item, one block of content, and it may have a list, but very often not. And that's when we realized that, and we did a lot of sketches and mock-ups of how it should work. We really started from saying, how does the user want to experience it? And then we realized that all these components, which are completely database focused, they were always like a different front end for a SQL database. That was always the concept. Maybe you could have a generic table, but it was still a table. And we just realized that if we want to do something that works at a content level, content item level, we have to start from scratch. And we've been using DNN since about 2003. We had our own content management systems before that. We loved the open source thing, but we just kept on hating the real rich text editor and the thing where all our customers would create really ugly websites. We would create a really cool layout and the content would really suck. And that was because they could change the fonts, they had trouble putting in pictures, they had this, and we just said we have to get out of this. And that's more or less where it started.
Got it. Okay, so again, you mentioned quickly there that you have been involved with DNN since 2003. And again, now let's talk a little bit about I mean, we are past our half hour here, so let's take a few minutes here to talk about the past and how you came about to become who you are. Where do we start there? I mean, should we start from the jungle? I mean, let's start from the jungle stories. Give us a quick snapshot of how was your childhood, and I don't know if it was the teenage stage as well, but tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so basically my parents, well, before I was born, they, I believe, smuggled Bibles to communist countries, and then after I was born they figured, let's do something safer, let's become missionaries. So that's how it started. So my parents are Swiss. I should technically be speaking Swiss German, but they went to England to learn English, Bible translation, and when I was 5 we went to Papua New Guinea, jungle camp, malaria, surviving, helicopter flights, all those basics you need for jungle survival training. And so with 6 we went to Indonesia, which people don't usually know this is the biggest Muslim country in the world, and it's very peaceful, so please everybody that hates the Muslims, just look at the big countries, they're doing well. And so by the time I was 7 I spoke 4 languages fluently, and we were getting ready to go into the jungle and help people out there. And for that my parents needed computers. So in 1984, where almost nobody even had a computer, my parents already had a laptop to do Bible translation. And learned Visual Basic programming with that and had a lot of fun, wanted to become a game developer. So when we got back to Switzerland in 94, I was almost 17. I had no more German. I couldn't speak German anymore, but I could develop. I had a lot of English, so I came here and founded an internet company.
Nice. And back then, I mean, that was the beginning of the web as we know it, 95, 90, 96, and it must have been very, very challenging that time there to get things started. So you didn't go to a formal school to learn coding. I mean, you did it on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see any difference from, do you see advantages or disadvantages of going that course, without going to a formal university,
Yeah, it's a very hard question. Basically, when I was a kid, I had 2 hours of school every day. That was it. The rest was running around in the jungle, going to some pond up a hill and go swimming, but of course also, like maybe slaughtering a pig or something because you had to get food. So I think a lot of the jungle was simply learning by doing, and I kind of applied that later on in my life. So I have no formal education to really, I mean, I do have something because I went to school till I was like 19, but yeah, in Switzerland there would not be a lot of jobs for this kind of training. So the fun thing is, of course, with the internet, like nowadays I teach at a formal school. I teach young people, I mean like 20, 30-year-olds, how to make intranets and document management and things like that. But I myself have no certificate for whatsoever.
Got it. And you know what? At the end of the day, I mean, it's all about what you make of it, And I think that you are doing great. I mean, you cannot. I guess you cannot complain too much about the. You cannot look back and say, "Hey, if I should have gone to university, maybe I would be a little bit better off." You cannot say that. I think that you're fine there.
No, actually the most challenging thing is that I think technical problems you can solve easily, but once you get a company, you run into a lot of problems which have nothing to do with technology. And I think one of the hardest things is then breaking free from the technical mindset and saying, okay, this is a problem which is not technical. It's like the iPhone problem. You can't just add another button to make it work. You have to step back and really analyze how the thing actually works, how to figure out how do people work, how do customers work. And very often, things that you think are like people are bad, whatever, turns out the process just sucked. And there were so many things that just made it more likely that it would fail. And then as a manager, you have to kind of step back and try to remove things that make it likely to fail And that's a very different way of looking at the world. And I think that also flowed into Too Sexy because it's often not a technical solution that we provide, but more a different way of looking at it.
Got it. Okay, so let's skip and jump to the future now, actually to the present, and then a little bit to the future in a second. You are, as I mentioned at the beginning, you are a very prolific blogger. No, I mean, if you go to the DNN store blog right now, I would say 5 out of, not 5 out of 10, I mean, not 8 out of 10 blogs are blogs from yourself, So again, technology seems to excite you a lot, but being more specific, what aspect of technology currently and that you see in the near future coming up, what excites you today?
So at the very moment, what I think is really, really cool is the way the entire world is moving towards JavaScript as a real development tool. To be completely transparent, I created my first Ajax application in 1998. So that's 18 years ago. And at that time, we really had to use iframes and have to tell the iframe to load a new JavaScript and then process the answer in the browser because there was no such thing as Ajax. And what I see today is that JavaScript has matured so much and the server platforms have also matured so that, to take a short example from SharePoint, which is now so cloud-focused, nobody wants to install any software on the SharePoint server anymore. Everything has to happen in the client or in a completely separate third-party system. And once you look, at first you think it's all way too complicated, but once you start seeing the problems you had previously because you installed things on the server, you start seeing there's so many benefits. But that means you need to really get good at JavaScript and you need to automate a lot of development steps because JavaScript just takes too much time to debug and to fix if you can't figure that out. So at the moment we're extremely excited about Node.js, and of course Microsoft is also providing an engine now to run Node, so it's not just a Google engine now, about automation like Grunt with NPM and Bower, and with, let's say, very advanced client frameworks like AngularJS. And I'm convinced the entire web will go that way. And the server will, in many ways, become unimportant. Because once you know the JavaScript side of things, you don't really care whether it's a PHP web service, which gives you the data, or a DNN web service. And it'll also make the transition from DNN 8, as it is now, to a future DNN extremely easy, because there's almost no dependencies which you really care about anymore. And that's what we're really excited about and focused on.
Got it. Okay, so I have a question here, more from a personal level, a personal curiosity here. Because again, you are a technical guy.
Yeah.
Knows a lot about the technical side of things. And you are a business owner as well. You operate a business there. So how can you humanly do both of those aspects? Because those aspects are very demanding on their own, I mean, they, again, I find it hard to understand that. So again, give me a minute spiel of how you managed to push those two aspects forward.
Okay, that's really hard. Because that, of course, is probably the hardest thing in all of it. And that's just two of the hats that I have. I have another 2 or 3 at the same time because I still have the SharePoint hat as well, which is an important business part for us. And I also have to have the marketing hat. But I don't really, I would love to share a trick. It's really hard. I think the one thing that may help is I'm very, very, very organized. And that, I think, helps that things don't get lost when I focus on something. The biggest problem is that I may forget to do the business side because I'm so excited about the technology, or that I'm so absorbed with customers that I don't have the focus to keep on driving up Too Sexy. And so I have like an extremely managed task list and things, so that may help, but it's probably nothing a lot of people can work with because it's hard.
That answers that helps to answer that. And again, we have to take take your word for it. Okay, coming to an end here. Again, we're getting to over 45 minutes now. Just want to have your thoughts on where DNN is heading currently. I mean, do you see a bright future? I mean, actually, yeah, how do you see the DNN path that it's trailing right now, that it's moving towards right now? What's your take on that?
It's a bit complicated. The short version is that the strength is Microsoft has realized open source works, and Microsoft has realized AngularJS works, Node works. Microsoft has realized a lot of things are good, which DNN has been doing, like open source, and that's awesome. So for many things, we are more ready than most platforms. I think our biggest weakness is that we have a strong background of, let's say, Visual Basic style developers who know a little bit how to get things to work, but don't have the depth and don't know architecture, and they would just like to quickly write a few lines of code and hope that it works. And the new Web 2.0 world has a lot of code in it, a lot of architecture to make sure things work, and that will be the challenge, to lift the community to that level of thinking. And I think if we don't get that to work, we would fail. And if we can get that to work and leverage all the open source ideas and the volunteers doing things, then there's a really, really bright future out there.
Good, good. I think that we covered a lot here, Daniel. Last question is really anything that was not covered that you want to mention, any last words here? Again, go for it.
Well, I'm going to continue to write lots of blogs. I've written over 100, and I really tried to contribute to the community. So next few blogs are going to be how to create your own font icons, for example, and how to manage them in a life cycle. There's also going to be blogs about sharing content and content types across portal borders, which is some fairly complex scenarios, but there are so many use cases where you'd want that, and all of them are covered in Too Sexy. So I write a lot, I try to make videos, and I would love it, of course, if people watched it and read it, and if they gave feedback, because that's usually something you don't get a lot of. So that would be great. And if people would rate it, just in general, everybody that does open source work basically lives off of the feedback, because that's the only thing you get. And so if you guys are the ones that are more in the consuming mode and just benefiting, then at least give feedback, give some thumbs up, and always remember a 3-star rating is not a good rating. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Daniel, again, thank you very much. As you mentioned, you have a busy schedule there, and thank you for opening the time to talk to me and contribute that knowledge, experience to the audience as well. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. It was fun. See you later. Bye-bye.